Okay, we're going to move into our government section. And the first question, you have up to 4 minutes to answer this question. And it is a three-part question again. And we can provide you with materials to take notes too if you want it.
I'm saying you might need to repeat that question.
Okay, and in emergency we'll repeat the question, but we'll speed it up here. Okay, please share with the audience specific strategies that you will employ that will bring increased communication, transparency, and accountability to all levels of our tribal government, including finance. Please address these areas separately: communication, transparency, and accountability.
First, right?
Yes, correct.
As far as you said, communication, transparency, and
accountability.
Okay. Well, I think they all fall under accountability. Holding our programs, our leadership accountable, I think has to be at the core is communication with our people. And for the 8 years I've been on council, the Sergeant at Arms has never issued out his newsletter that's required by resolution to update our community on the actions we're taking during our council meetings. Communication also in the sense of our trip reports. I think our trip reports for travel, especially if they're coming from travel programs, are important, and they need to be made available. So we ensure that we are not wasting the government's dime on trips, that they are bringing something back, they are able to give an update at the council floor, which I have done with all my trips during council meeting announcements. I think it's also important when we talk transparency, that is the ability to share information with the people. I think that's been hard for the last administrations because of, again, the fear of backlash of the decisions they're making, or the money they're spending, or the manner in which they're spending it. I think when people are able to see and understand how the government works, they begin to have confidence in that government. They begin to be more participants in the government. And I think when you do that, you in turn hold your leaders accountable because you know what they're doing. I think it's an old tactic to keep the people misinformed because information and knowledge is power. And by keeping the people misinformed or uninformed, they're unable to hold people accountable. And we even see that on a leadership level, amongst the administration, amongst different branches of our government. But I would have a strong effort and have communication be required. And that includes things in newsletters, things on the cable, and develop a more active website. I think our website needs improvement. I think we could allow more portals into our website to allow people to be hands-on with our information. You specifically said finance. I think in regards to our audits, we need to share that information. What our findings have been for the last 8 years to 10 years, and where we've come in corrective action of those findings. Because remember, if our government runs on 80% federal funding, and it's supposed to be 100% of providing services, we should do the best job we can. And by providing them with the audits and those corrective actions, especially for those programs, I think it's important. People will know where our problems are, and they can actually hold our leadership accountable to make sure we fix those problems.
Thank you, Candidate Robinson. Communication, transparency, and accountability.
Okay, I think communication starts at the top, and it's the responsibility of the President to make sure that there are clear communications between the administration and the people. That there are clear communications between the tribal council and the people. And this can be done a number of ways. We do have a website, and that could function in that capacity, but not everybody's got these access to review these websites. Another thing somebody mentioned too, and I don't know who it was, I really apologize, but I thought that was a really wonderful idea, is when we have tribal council meetings, to actually live stream them to where people can hear what's going on at that meeting when it's actually going on. I thought that is a great idea. And pretty cost effective too. The telephone system that we've been getting, we've got a bad one at the court, they've got a bad one at the tribe. We really need to get into the 21st century with that and get something. I believe in a live voice answering the phone and responding to a person. Now, if by any chance there is, somebody does have to leave a message, I believe that whoever that message is left for has an obligation to get back to them. And I've been in that position waiting for a call, like the old days, waiting for a check. Well, now I'm waiting for a call. So the communications, there are any number of ways to do that, but I think posting the minutes, having it where we can read something, that needs to be done as well. But also for the program, I'm a strong, strong believer in outreach. I believe that it is a responsibility of ours not to sit there and wait for somebody to come for us for our service. I think it's our job to get out there and let the community know who we are, what we're doing, why we're there, and find out who we can help. It's critical. We have so many people get caught in that little maze of not knowing who to go or how to resolve a problem. And a really good way, too, is to hire an information officer. If the money is available, that's something that I had considered. Somebody who can guide people through the maze and get them to the right office for whatever their needs are. Transparency, I think that pretty much covers that. I mean, we have an obligation. We have to let the people know exactly what is going on in the government. And not way after the fact, too. There's a lot of decisions made that are important, that affect the communities, that we need to take it to the communities first and let them know, hey, this is going on, and we're going to be presenting this to the council or to a committee or whatever. And that's something that we need to do. The other thing is finance, central finance. Central finance has you know, it was never set up to succeed. And I say that in a good way because I really admire the strength and courage of those people that work in central finance. They have a very difficult job, but they work with a multitude of policies and procedures, and day to day some of their directions may change, their jobs may change, but there is a way to come in and, number one, make sure that we bring them into the tribe. They're not a separate entity. And if you look at the plan of operations,
time is expired.
Okay.
Thank you.
The treasurer is under the tribal president, though. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to stick with you, though, Candidate Robinson, but we're moving to a new question. Please share your perspective on the current state of our Constitution and separation of powers. Is it working? Do you plan to revise it? And if so, who will you work with to bring about changes or revisions?
Okay.
2 minutes.
You know, the interesting thing I found about the separation of powers ordinance is it only addresses the powers and authorities of the judicial branch. And now it was approved in, what, 1998? And the powers and authorities of the executive branch and the legislative branch have never been fleshed out. this has caused a lot of problems because this has caused the legislative branch to believe certain authorities lay under that branch, and the administration would say, no, that's under the executive branch. And you know what? While all this was going on, the judicial branch held the tribal government together because things were filed in court, were decided in the judicial branch. And I thought, good Lord, they have just made the judicial branch the most powerful branch in the tribe, and it shouldn't be that way. So, you know, it's difficult. Are we saying if we're going to revise the Constitution, we need to take a look at there are some revisions that need to be done. But in that process, we really need to flesh it out completely and get all the powers of both branches in place, and we're going to have a lot less problems between the three branches, and I think we're going to work a lot better together. And yes, I will work to initiate that.
Thank you. Candidate Killsback, constitutional revision and separation of powers. Who and how?
I would include a separation of powers with constitutional revision. I think it's important that we understand that revising our Constitution is not going to be done by lawyers. It's going to be done by the people. And I think that it would have to be vetted out. It would have to be given to the districts, to the community, to understand. You know, it's going to be a huge undertaking for educating our community on our Constitution. First of all, the current one we have, so we can understand what's wrong with it. We can understand issues that are allowing us to be ineffective as a government. I think that, of course, strengthening three branches of government is important. We need a separation of powers ordinance to address the executive branch and its powers, which is the president's branch of government. And then we need a more distinct separation of powers to address the legislator's role. Too often this becomes interpreted in constitutional court. Too often we're not addressing an impasse, if we have one. If we have a removal that I've seen in my time as council, where we've had to have the Bureau come in and tell us who's our president. I think we need to ensure that our Constitution fits us, it benefits us, but it addresses our issues of recall and impasse. Impasse is when we can't make a decision, when we can't come to a conclusion. And we have to be able to address it. If that includes some of our cultural ways and traditional law, then let's include that in our constitutional revision and make it part of who we are as a government.
Thank you. Candidate Killsback, we're going to keep you for the next question first. What strategies would you use to get the council to work more effectively together on projects and initiatives?
First of all, I would remind council that they swear an oath to the people and that they uphold ethical standards. And in doing so, when we carry out our goal as a government, we do it for the people together. I think getting our council to move forward on initiatives means, again, that idea of consensus. That we are all selected by the people, by the community, by our membership to better our reservation, to better our conditions, and to make a future for our children. I would require, again, accountability and transparency, but I would also remind them that their oath is not just mere words uttered to collect a salary paycheck. I would ask that they follow through with a resolution we pass that requires us, and only a few of us are doing it, to account for our time, to account for where we're at and what we're doing on a daily basis. I think taking that step further, I would post that on the internet. I would post my monthly calendar for the people and have the council do the same. That way we all know who our boss is, and that's the people. And that's what I would remind our leadership, that that's why we're here. And keeping that open line of communication with our district, having that community mobilization project where the people decide or give us recommendations on what they'd like to see in our communities, and we move forward with it. But we all agree on it, that we have a goal together to complete for our people.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson, 2 minutes. Strategies to get the council to work more effectively together.
I'm not sure it's really a strategy, but it's just my approach to things. You know, in my job as judge, I work with a number of parties that aren't getting along, and we spend a lot of time in the court, not simply making a decision, but narrowing things down to resolve what the issues are and come away where each party is somewhat satisfied and it meets the requirements of the law. That same strategy works as the president. I believe it's the job of the president to allow the council to do their job, to work on these matters, to present matters, but if they get to a stalemate, and this is something that we see a real need for and that is going to really impact the people, and it's necessary. It's the job of the president to go in, take that step, take that initiative, go meet with the council, whether individually or groups or whatever, to do that same thing, do some problem resolution, to bring them down to the common issues, what they can agree on. And the thing about it is, you might walk away with less than what you wanted, but you're going to get something accomplished that's going to help the people.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson, we're going to move to you for 2 minutes on the next question. What are your expectations about employees showing up on time to work and working professionally with the community? Also, what are your views of the number of tribal holidays and granting of executive leave?
Any employees in the house? You know, that's one of the strengths of any program, is to have your employees there when they're supposed to be, to put in a full day's work, a good day's work, a productive day's work, and go home when you're supposed to. We do a lot of in-house training at the court, and that's one of the things we always emphasize. And you know what? I don't emphasize it. The staff emphasizes it because that's what they believe in at the court. And it's because they've worked under that obligation for so long, and it's become a part of who they are. And that's exactly what I would take over to the other tribal employees. We're stealing from our own people, we're stealing from the government if we're not there when we're supposed to be and we're not being productive. The public, again, is why we're there. We have to treat the people with respect. And I always say, you treat the people the way that you would want to be treated, and most people are going to be okay with that. Most people just want an answer or some direction, and we can get that to them. That's our job. That gets back down to basic communications and just being good to one another.
Thank you. Candidate Killsback, do you need a repeat or highlight, or you got it?
I think this goes back to the vision, you know, and if our major purpose as a government is to provide service for our people, then that should be our goal. And if our employees are not in line with that goal, then they don't need to be here. And that sounds kind of harsh, but I heard it before. I heard it with education. If you're not here to benefit or educate our children, and you're here for other things, for personal gratification, to gossip in the workplace, to play solitary, you don't need to be here. Your number one job is to serve our people. And I think what you do with the staff is you do professional development. We run our government like a business, okay? And that goes back to creating an actual human resources department okay, an actual department that deals with benefits. And let's start offering our employees benefits and incentives. This tribal holiday, I've been on it for 8 years. It used to be my spiel. It's the only thing we can offer. That's not true. Our administration hasn't even looked into offering benefits for our employees. Retirement, a 401k. Those are things we can do. Run our tribal government like a business. In 2013, next year, we're going to be eligible for Obamacare. We can offer our employees the same health benefits IHS and congressmen get. That's what we need to do for our employees. What are we doing? We're giving them incentives to be better workers. We're making it a healthy environment, and we're growing as a government. And those services will in turn improve because, again, we have to look at our tribal membership, our clients, as customers using our tribal services. And we got to do better at it.
Thank you. And we'll stay with you, candidate Killsback, for the next question. 2 minutes. There has been much emotional conversation recently about blood quantum as it pertains to enrollment. What is your position on this issue? How would you have the conversation about this issue?
This issue came up during the PERCAT. A couple of elders sitting behind me wanted me to address it. And in my 8 years on council, I have voted no on every adoption because I've seen a tribal member get enrolled with 1 over 256 as far as blood quantum. And I didn't think that was fair because in turn, what happens is those example would be scholarships. We have a scholarship for tribal members, and if there's a Cheyenne out there with 1 over 256 blood quantum that has never set foot on a reservation or has never seen our homeland, and we're giving them $6,000 to someone who grew up here, who needs that scholarship to go to college, I think there's got to be some preference there. And what this blood quantum thing has done is it's gotten to a life of its own. I think we need to amend our ordinance to close those loopholes. We have dual enrollment problems. Okay, we have people getting enrolled who aren't Cheyenne, and we've seen it. And I think we need to address it. It's something that, again, is controversial, I know, but I think we should look at a sophisticated way of looking at who's a member of our tribe. Instead of requirements, let's look at standards. Okay, a standard of what a Cheyenne is. Not necessarily blood quantum, okay, but I think there's got to be a more sophisticated way to determine who's a member of our tribe. It's a Supreme Court case, we have that right, and right now, all it takes is a claim to be Cheyenne and you can be enrolled. And I think that's a major loophole. And we've seen it, and we were addressing it months before the PERCAT was distributed. What if we get other types of resources? It all comes down to that. And we're not addressing what Cheyenne-ness or Indian-ness is as far as identity. And I think that can be included with our enrollment.
Thank you. Candidate.
That's really a non-issue to me. You know, when they created this IRA government to assume, we are not the government, we assumed a certain portion of the duties of the government, and those people smoked on it, and they sealed the deal right then. And that's very important today, because you don't take that lightly. What this means is, when they decided that blood quantum was not an issue, but that you, in order to be enrolled, it was by ancestry. I've never heard of any unverified persons being enrolled, because I've seen the process. My children, my grandchildren have been through the process. You have to show who your relatives are. They have to be enrolled, or they have to show who their lineage is. And you have to provide the birth certificates and everything. So it's a pretty good system. But the main thing is, that was the will of the people when they smoked on it, and they passed it over to the government to enforce. Once that's in place, I don't see the reason to change it. You know, there's strength in numbers.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson, we'll stick with you for the next question for 2 minutes. How will you represent and address the issues of Northern Cheyennes who live off of the reservation, especially since more and more tribal members are leaving the reservation for employment and educational opportunities?
Man, that's a whole bunch of issues there. The people that move off the reservation for employment or school, and there's some people that want to come back to the reservation. I think we have an obligation to create an economic climate here to where they can come back and work in their trade and be well paid for it. If they've gone off and they've got the job training, the education, the whatever it takes, the work experience, then they should. We need to better accommodate them, and that's through housing, having the jobs, raising the job standards as these jobs become open. For those that live off the reservation, I believe they have a right to be involved in that process. You know, our people used to live all the way from North Dakota all the way down to Mexico in different bands. We got together as needed for certain events and never lost being a Cheyenne. I think that a big problem, though, is the voting, this absentee ballot thing and all that. I think we could resolve that by having one off-reservation tribal council person, somebody who resides off the reservation, because as it is right now, they live off the reservation, but when they vote, they have to know which district that they can vote in, and if there's no known district, you got people that may never lived here, but so they vote and name their district. You know, we could resolve that by adding, just because of constitutional revision, adding an off-reservation tribal council member.
Thank you. Candidate Killsback, representation of Northern Cheyennes who live off of the reservation.
You know, you got a chance to say something about the other question. I had a phone call during her cap from a lady, and I played it for the people in my office. I said, hi, this is, I forget her name. I'm a white Indian. You met me at Percat. I want to know how to access IHS because I have no money. She didn't even say Cheyenne. She said white Indian. And this is why I go to meetings, because we're sitting there fighting for scraps. And it's a true story of how our government system is set up. But we're at the table, and the statistics that we give these funding agencies are statistics from our reservation. High rates of diabetes, high rates of dropout, high rates of mortality, I mean, you name it, suicide, substance abuse. These are statistics from our reservation. And I think the idea of an off-reservation representative is a little strange, because it's going to compromise what I think is our sovereignty. Our sovereignty is to our land here and the people who reside on that land. And I think that's where me and my opponent have a strong difference. And I look at it because of our people on the reservation. If those rates are so high in our communities here, we should be allocating resources to better that. That's why we're out there fighting. That's why we're out there at the table in D.C., because of our homeland here. And I understand that half our population live off the reservation, you know, but I am really, really a lot more concerned with those living here. That's who I had to go to a funeral today, because of our people here. That's who goes to school here. And to me, that means a lot.
Thank you. Okay, Candidate Killsback will keep you for the next question. This is our final government reform question. 2 minutes. How will you exercise and protect our tribal sovereignty under your administration's leadership? And what are some key issues and actions you see that we can take right now?
First of all, I have the idea that sovereignty is inherent. It is not given or taken away. It's ours. And being indigenous and being Cheyenne, we have the right to govern ourselves and our lands. I would protect our lands. I would ensure that no other jurisdictions would encroach on ours. An example is during the fires, our administration wanted to accept some state money for Tongue River Road in Ashland, not knowing the consequences of that. He accepted the money. We said, no, don't accept it. We have an issue of jurisdiction on that road right now. We maintain it, we control it, it's our road. The fact that we're going to accept money for them to put a fence up for it because it burnt down shows we're giving away some of our sovereignty. I think that's a perfect example of leadership we need at the table, at the state level also, with our compacts, our cigarette gas, our gaming compacts. We need to move forward with the idea that we're not going to wait for the Bureau or the state to tell us what we can and cannot do. We take it inherently. We are sovereign, let's do it. The idea is getting leadership that understands that concept and that can move forward with it. I'm tired of other jurisdictions trying to extradite our people. I'm tired of other jurisdictions trying to pull over our people on our roads. You know, our issue is going to be right-of-ways coming up here, 2023. All our right-of-ways will end. That's going to be a chance for us to get complete control over our land. The other part of that is going to be purchasing fee land downtown here in Lander and making our reservation whole along with Otter Creek. We'll be 100% whole as a reservation. Probably the first tribe ever.
Thank you. Candidate Robinson, tribal sovereignty under your leadership and key issues and actions we can take right away.
The truest act of sovereignty is when the government of the tribe sits down with other governments, whether it's city, county, state, federal, sits down with them and negotiates some of the agreements. It would be nice to say we're sovereign, we own this land, but what are we going to do? Who's going to pay for it? You know, the reality is, until we get some sort of economic development, we're going to remain this quasi-sovereign status, which is the legal term. But here's what I believe, and I've said this twice before tonight. Let's not act sovereign, let's be sovereign. Let's make sovereign decisions. Let's put the people before us. Let's act as a government responsibly. And let's sit down and let's work with the county. Let's work with the state. Look at that same disaster. A lot of this could have been avoided. Now, we did have a reservation plan and an emergency response plan. It's my understanding something failed in that plan. The other thing was we didn't have the agreements that we needed with the state, with Bureau of Land Management, with Bureau of Reclamation, with any of these people, that we could have made a joint effort to jump in and stop that fire. These are something that we need some foresight on. We need to think of these things in advance. And to be sovereign means that we have to be true to our people and represent our people well when we meet with the other governments and carry our true values to the table.
Thank you.